Welcome to Crushed Husband. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. My name is Jeff. I'm 38 years old and I live in Springfield, Missouri. I've got a great husband, Liam, and two amazing kids, Tom and Ava. If there's one thing I've always believed in, it's showing up for your family, especially your kids. That belief is exactly what got tested last November, on a cold Tuesday morning that started with a phone call from my mother. I was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee while Tom chased Ava around the living room in his superhero cape. It was loud, chaotic, and honestly, perfect. Then my phone rang. "Hi, honey," Mom said, all bright and chipper. "Do you have a second to talk about Thanksgiving?" "Sure," I said, grabbing my mug. "What's up?" She hesitated. Just a beat, but enough to make me sit up straighter. "Well," she began, "we're doing something a little different this year. We're going to keep it simpler, just adults this time." My brain stalled. "Just adults?" "Yes," she said quickly. "It'll just be me, your dad, your brother Jack and Jessica, and a couple of close friends. We thought it might be nice to do something quieter, you know? Just grown-up time." I felt my stomach drop. "So Tom and Ava aren't invited?" "Well," she laughed lightly, "they're just so energetic, Jeff. And it's not that we don't love them, but they can be a bit much." "They're 6 and 8, I said flatly. "I know, but they're very spirited. Jack's kids are a little more mellow. It's just a different vibe." And there it was, the same old comparison. I clenched my jaw. "So Jack's kids are invited?" "Yes, because they're a bit older, and they know how to sit still and—" "Right," I cut in, my voice turning sharper than I meant. "Because they're better behaved." "That's not what I said," she replied, but I could hear the lie hiding behind her sweet tone. It was exactly what she meant. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Birthdays where my kids got the overflow presents. Christmas where Jack's son got a drone and Ava got a puzzle from Dollar Tree. Every time, I told myself I was imagining it, that I was being sensitive. But this wasn't subtle. This was a line in the sand. "Let me be clear," I said, standing up and moving toward the living room so my kids wouldn't hear. "If my children aren't welcome, then neither am I." There was silence on the other end. Then a sigh. "Jeff, don't be dramatic. It's just one holiday." "No," I said, my voice calm but firm. "It's not just one holiday. It's a pattern, and I'm done making excuses for it. Jack understands." "I don't give a damn what Jack understands," I snapped. "I'm not going to explain to my kids why their cousins got to have turkey and pie and they didn't. I'm not going to pretend like this is normal. If you think excluding children is part of some new grown-up tradition, then you can count me out for good." "Jeff," she said, almost pleading now, "don't do this. I'm not doing anything. You did this. You made your choice. And I'm making mine." I ended the call, just like that. I stood there, phone still in my hand, heart pounding in my chest. I looked back at my kids who were now sprawled on the floor building a castle out of couch cushions, laughing so hard Ava could barely breathe. They didn't know what had just happened, but I did. I had drawn a line, finally, not just for me, but for them. My children were not second-class members of this family, and I would never let them feel unwanted again. That was the last conversation I had with my mother, and I meant every word. The next morning started like any other. I was standing by the stove making scrambled eggs while Tom sat at the kitchen table drawing rocket ships and Ava tried to balance a spoon on her nose. Liam walked in, kissed me on the cheek, and asked how I slept. I said fine, but that wasn't true. My mother's voice had been ringing in my ears all night. They're just too energetic. I was still trying to shake it off when my phone buzzed. "Jack, 7:14 a.m. Heard about Thanksgiving. You really need to stop being so difficult." I froze, spatula midair. I stared at the screen, rereading the text. Difficult? I took a slow breath and set the phone down on the counter. Liam noticed right away. "That from your mom again?" "Number Jack," I said. "Apparently I'm being difficult." Liam raised an eyebrow. "Well, at least he didn't go with ungrateful or overreacting. That's usually your mom's go-to." I picked up the phone again. "Me. You mean because I won't let my kids be excluded from a family holiday?" His response came fast. "Jack, 7:17 a.m. It's one meal, Jeff. It's not a big deal. You're making this dramatic. I felt something rise up in my chest. Not anger, not quite yet. More like a tired kind of disbelief, like someone who's been slowly drowning and finally realizes no one is throwing them a rope. Me? You really think it's about one meal? Jack: honestly, yeah. You're acting like mom and dad banished your kids forever. They just wanted a quiet night. A quiet night. I stepped out of the kitchen and walked down the hall, away from the kids, trying to keep my hands from shaking. Because Jack, my own brother, didn't get it. He never had. He'd always been the golden boy. The easy one. The one who could do no wrong. His kids showed up to dinner in color-coordinated outfits. Mine showed up in Spider-Man pajamas and talked too loud and spilled juice sometimes. Apparently that was enough to make them unworthy. Me? You know what hurts? It's not even that they didn't invite my kids. It's that you think that's okay. Jack, it's not a big deal, unless you make it one. They were trying to be practical. That's what they called singling out my children, practical. Like they were some kind of inconvenience that needed to be removed for efficiency. Me? Tell me something, Jack. Would you have gone if they told your kids to stay home? He didn't respond right away. I waited, watching the screen. Nothing. Finally, Jack, 7:26 a.m. Well, my kids behave, so it's not really the same situation. There it was, the gut punch. The part they always tiptoed around but never quite said out loud. Tom and Ava weren't just energetic. They weren't just loud. They were less than, less worthy, less welcome. That was the moment I knew. Me? Don't text me again. We're done here. He replied, but I didn't read it. I blocked his number. I walked back into the kitchen where Liam was helping Ava peel a banana with way too much enthusiasm. Tom was still scribbling with crayons, humming under his breath. They had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. But I did. And I knew one thing for sure. If standing up for them meant standing alone, then so be it. I was done. With Jack, with the fake apologies, with being the difficult one, just because I refused to let my kids be treated like they didn't belong. That part of my family, I cut it off that morning, and the silence that followed, it felt like breathing clean air for the first time in years. The calls started the next day. I saw Mom flash on the screen while I was making sandwiches for the kids' lunch. I let it ring. A minute later, Dad popped up. Then a few hours after that, a message from their landline. Call us back when you're thinking clearly. I wasn't thinking clearly. Number? I was thinking clearly for the first time in years. By day 3, they were calling at odd times. Early in the morning, during dinner, even once after 10 at night. No voicemails, no texts, just the constant ringing, as if that was supposed to wear me down. But I'd made up my mind. I blocked the numbers. Liam noticed. They still calling? I nodded. Not anymore. He didn't say anything. He just reached over and gave my hand a squeeze. I didn't need a lecture. I needed someone in my corner. And Liam always had been. The truth was, ignoring the calls wasn't just about Thanksgiving. It was about everything that had built up over the years. The errands I ran without thanks, the times I bailed them out quietly when their credit cards got declined, the endless times they leaned on me emotionally while never asking how I was doing. And worse, the way they treated Tom and Ava like they were always just a little too much. I used to tell myself they just didn't know how to connect with young kids. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. They simply didn't want to try. Not with my kids anyway. Tom and Ava stayed blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in the background. They still asked when they'd see Grandma and Grandpa again, and I gave vague answers like, not for a little while. I didn't have it in me to tell them the truth. Not yet. But I watched them closely. Watched Ava lean into Liam's lap on the couch while watching cartoons. Watched Tom build Lego towers and proudly show them to us like we were the most important audience in the world. They were happy. They were whole. They didn't need anyone else to validate that, and neither did I. The silence eventually came, around day 6. The calls stopped. The texts never came. For a brief second, I thought maybe it was over. But it didn't feel like peace. It felt like a standoff, like they were waiting for me to crack first, to come crawling back, like I always had. Apologize for blowing things out of proportion, just to keep the peace, but not this time. Because the truth is, I wasn't interested in peace that came at the cost of my kids' dignity. I wasn't going to play the game where I pretended everything was fine while they kept deciding which grandchildren counted and which didn't. I didn't owe them anything. Not my time, not my silence, and certainly not my guilt. That weight I used to carry, of being the good son, the one who held everything together, It was finally slipping off my shoulders, and it felt damn good. It was the Monday before Thanksgiving when my phone rang again. Blocked number. Normally I wouldn't have answered. I had a rule now about surprises from anyone related to me. But something told me this call wasn't going to wait. I picked up. Hello? Jeff! My mother's voice snapped, sharper than usual. Why did your father's credit card decline at the grocery store? No hello, no small talk, just straight to the accusation. I sat down on the arm of the couch. I don't know, Mom. Why don't you ask the person whose name is on the card? You know damn well it's the one you set up for him. I stayed quiet for a second, because she was right. Years ago, maybe 6 I think, my dad had casually mentioned he was having trouble paying for gas. So I added him as an authorized user on one of my cards, told myself it was no big deal. Then it turned into groceries, pharmacy runs. Eventually it was their default card for everything. I'd never asked for repayment, never even brought it up. Jeff, my mom said again, like I owed her an answer. Did you cancel it? I took a breath. Yes. You what? I canceled it, I said calmly. Last week. She went silent for a beat. Without telling us? You didn't tell me you were using it to buy a $300 wine decanter last month, I replied. So I figured we were done asking permission. That was for your father's birthday. I don't care, I cut in. You've been using my money for years like it's your own. You never said thank you. You never even acknowledged it. And now you have the nerve to call me yelling. This is our family, Jeff, she said. You don't just pull the plug on support like that. We rely on that card. I laughed. And there it is. You don't see me as your son. I'm just your emergency fund. Your quiet little provider who's supposed to take care of everything, no questions asked. You're being dramatic. God, you and Jack must rehearse this crap together, I snapped. Dramatic? Really? You excluded my kids from Thanksgiving because they're too energetic, and now you're shocked I'm not footing the bill for your groceries anymore? Her voice turned colder. This isn't about Thanksgiving. This is about respect. No, this is about control, I said. It always has been. You've never had to worry about money, she fired back. You and Liam live in a nice house. You take vacations. You don't even realize how lucky you are. You're right, I said, standing now. I am lucky. I've got a husband who respects me, kids who love me, and a family I chose, not one I have to keep bailing out like some unpaid servant. She started to say something else, but I didn't let her. I'm done, Mom. No more credit cards. No more secret bills. No more favors. You've used up every bit of goodwill I ever had. Then I hung up. I walked back into the kitchen where Liam was putting dishes away. He looked at me and raised an eyebrow. I just nodded. Canceled the card. He gave me a look, not surprised, just proud. Tom was at the table drawing a dinosaur. Ava sat across from him, narrating an imaginary story with paper dolls. They didn't know what had just happened, but I did. I'd just drawn a firm final line, and this time I wasn't stepping back over it. It was the Friday after Thanksgiving. The house smelled like leftover stuffing. Tom and Ava were watching a cartoon marathon in the living room, and Liam and I were finally enjoying some peace. Or, at least we were, until the mail arrived. There it was. A manila envelope addressed to me, in all caps, with my full legal name. No return address, but I didn't need one to know who sent it. My stomach tightened. I opened it slowly, carefully, like it might explode. Inside was a printed letter, 4 pages long. It looked like a legal document, formatted like one too. I skimmed the heading and almost laughed. Notice of reimbursement demand for financial and emotional support. David and Cynthia Moore, plaintiffs. Jeffrey Moore, defendant. I read the first paragraph out loud in disbelief. This letter constitutes formal notification that we, as your legal guardians from birth until adulthood, are entitled to reimbursement for expenses incurred in raising you. I blinked. Liam looked up from the couch. Are you kidding? I shook my head. It gets better. They're billing me for childhood room and board, and orthodontics. They're charging you for braces? Liam asked. They are, I said, flipping the page. And family vacations. Public school lunches. Oh, and emotional support, of course. That one's listed at $25 per week, every week since I was born. Liam walked over, took the papers from my hands, and skimmed a few lines. Then he looked up at me, eyes wide. They're actually serious. I think they are. At the bottom of the final page, in bold, it read, Total balance due, $61,472.38. Payment required within 14 days of receipt. For a few seconds, I just stared at the number. Not because it scared me, but because I couldn't believe how far they were willing to go. I had cut off the card. I had ignored the calls. And now this was their Hail Mary, a formal invoice for being their son. They're trying to guilt me through legal paperwork, I said. And honestly, it's pathetic. Liam shook his head. You're not really going to let that slide, are you? No, I said, already picking up my keys. Not this time. Their house looked exactly the same. Beige siding, fake pine wreath on the front door. I knocked twice, firmly. My dad opened it, surprised. My mom was just behind him, her mouth tight like she'd been waiting for this. I held up the envelope. Got your letter. Mom folded her arms. Good. Then you know where we stand. Yeah, I said, walking right past them into the living room. I know exactly where you stand. At the bottom of a very steep cliff of delusion. Dad frowned. Don't be rude. You sent me a bill for $61,000 because I wouldn't pay your grocery tab, I said. You think that's not rude? We raised you, my mom said, voice rising. We supported you. That has value. I stared at her. You didn't raise me out of charity. You raised me because I was your kid. That's not a loan. That's parenting. We made sacrifices for you, she snapped. And I spent the last decade making sacrifices for you, I shot back. I paid your bills, covered your debts, ran your errands, and bit my tongue every time you sidelined my kids. And the minute I said enough, you filed a fake invoice. We just want what's fair, Dad said flatly. Fair? I laughed. You cut my kids out of Thanksgiving because they weren't calm enough for your new just adults rule. You told me I was dramatic, difficult, selfish. And now you want me to pay you for being your son? Number. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled the papers back out, and ripped them in half. Then in half again, then again. Mom's jaw dropped. Jeff, I'm done, I said, loud and final. I'm done being the one who keeps the family together. You don't get to treat me like garbage and then send me a bill. This was your last move, and now you've lost. I turned for the door. You'll regret this, my dad called after me. No, I said, stepping outside. For once, I really don't think I will. The door slammed behind me. The sun was already setting. And just like that, the last string connecting us, legal, financial, or emotional, was gone. Christmas Eve fell quiet in our house. Tom and Ava were dressed in their pajamas by 6, already bouncing with excitement. Liam had hot chocolate on the stove, and the smell of cinnamon filled the air. I was sitting on the floor next to the tree, wrapping the last of the gifts with a Sharpie clenched between my teeth. It was peaceful. It was ours. And then the doorbell rang. 3 slow chimes. Not rushed, not hesitant, just deliberate. Liam and I locked eyes. Don't answer it, he said, drying his hands on a towel. But I already knew who it was. I stood up, walked over, and peeked through the peephole. It was all of them. My parents stood on the porch holding a red gift bag. Behind them, Jack was wrangling his twin daughters, who were bundled in matching coats. Jessica stood off to the side, arms crossed, clearly not thrilled to be part of the production. I opened the door, but didn't say a word. Jeff, my mom began, her tone soft and full of practiced warmth. We just came by to drop off some presents for the kids. She held out the bag. I didn't take it. Tom and Ava deserve a Christmas gift from their grandparents, she added, as if that alone would erase the last month. My dad tried next. We thought, maybe it's time we move past all the drama. I actually laughed. The drama? You mean the part where you excluded my kids from Thanksgiving? Or the fake lawsuit you mailed to my house last week? Jack stepped forward. Come on, Jeff. It's Christmas. You're really gonna keep holding a grudge? A grudge? I repeated. Jack, you told me I was difficult. Mom said my kids were too much. Then she demanded $60,000 for raising me. You all made your position very clear. Sweetheart, my mom cut in, her voice trembling, we didn't mean for things to get so ugly. Let's just call this a truce. The kids don't have to suffer. I finally took the bag. I looked inside. 2 generic toys, clearly last-minute pickups, unopened price tags still on them. I set the bag on the porch. Tom and Ava aren't suffering. They're inside, happy, with parents who love them. The people making them suffer are the ones who decided they weren't good enough to sit at the Thanksgiving table. Jack stepped closer. This is ridiculous. You're punishing everyone just because you didn't get your way. No, I said. I'm protecting my kids. That's not punishment. That's parenting. My mom's face fell, and she reached out to touch my arm. Can't we just pretend it didn't happen? I stepped back. Number. Because it did happen, and pretending it didn't is how this family always works. I'm done pretending. Jessica looked up, finally speaking for the first time. Maybe we should go. Jack gave her a look, but she didn't back down. Liam appeared behind me in the doorway, his presence quiet but solid. We're trying to have a peaceful Christmas, he said simply. There was another pause. Cold air drifted into the house. Then I looked my parents in the eyes. If you can't respect me or my kids, you don't get to be in our lives, not even on Christmas. My mother opened her mouth, but before she could say anything, I closed the door. Not slammed, just shut. On the other side, I heard my dad mutter something, followed by the rustle of coats and footsteps retreating down the porch. Inside, it was quiet again. Liam rested a hand on my shoulder. You okay? I nodded. More than okay. In the living room, Ava squealed as Tom knocked over a stack of couch cushions. Their laughter echoed through the house, warm and untouchable. That night, I tucked them into bed, knowing they would never remember what had happened at that door, and I would never let them feel the weight of it. Not now. Not ever again. New Year's Eve at our house was simple. Nothing fancy, just hot cocoa, board games, and letting the kids stay up way past bedtime. Tom had made a paper crown that said 2025 King and wore it like he was royalty. Ava was bouncing on the couch in pajamas that lit up when she moved. We were counting down hours, not seconds, and for once, it felt like the year might actually end without a fight. Then someone knocked. 3 slow, heavy pounds on the door. Liam gave me a look. Tell me that's the pizza guy. I didn't even bother checking the peephole this time. I opened the door. There they were, my parents, again. This time, though, they weren't holding gifts or smiles. They were standing stiff and stone-faced in the cold, and my dad had a manila folder under his arm. My stomach dropped before he even said a word. We're here to talk, he said. I bet you are, I replied, leaning against the doorframe. My mom took a breath. We didn't want it to come to this, Jeff, but you've left us no choice. I didn't respond, just stared. Dad opened the folder and pulled out a letter. This is a legal notice. We're pursuing visitation rights under Missouri's grandparents' rights law. Liam appeared at my side instantly. You're what? We're not trying to take anyone to court, Mom said quickly. We just want to see the kids. We're their grandparents. We have a right. I couldn't help it. I laughed. It wasn't loud or mean, just tired. You think a judge is going to force me to let you near my kids after you excluded them from a family holiday, tried to use my money, threatened me with fake legal bills, and now this. Dad's jaw clenched. We're not the villains here. Yes, you are, I said calmly. You always have been. You just got away with it for a long time because I was too afraid to call you out. Jack stepped into view from the side of the porch. You're making this worse than it needs to be. Did they drag you into this too? I asked him. He shrugged. They just want to fix it. No, they want control, I said. They always do. Mom held out the letter again. Jeff, we don't want to go to court, but we will. I took the paper, skimmed the top of it. It was nothing more than a generic threat, a form letter, no attorney's name, just their signatures and some cobbled-together legal jargon. This isn't even real, I said. It's a bluff. It doesn't have to be, Dad said. You're pushing us. Liam stepped forward. You already pushed us too far. I looked at them one by one, my mother's tight lips, my father's puffed chest. Jack's annoyed stare. Then I said, you try anything legal, and I'll counter with everything I've got. You think a judge wants to hear about how you financially exploited me for a decade? How you belittled my kids? You want to go to court? I'll bring the receipts, literally. Their faces changed, just slightly, like they realized all at once that I wasn't bluffing. You want exposure? I continued. You want your family drama dragged into public records? Go ahead. I've got nothing to lose. Jack muttered. Jesus, Jeff. No, I said. Don't Jesus Jeff me. You all created this mess. And now you're standing on my doorstep trying to intimidate me with some fake letter and threats of visitation rights. You don't want to visit these kids. You want to own them. You want access, not love. My mom shook her head. This is what bitterness does to people. I smiled coldly. Number? This is what boundaries look like? There was a long pause. My dad looked at the letter, then back at me. So, you're saying we're done? I'm saying we've been done. You just didn't want to believe it. He opened his mouth, but I closed the door. Not with a slam, just the final gentle kind that makes it clear a conversation is over. Inside, the kids were curled up under a blanket, watching a cartoon. Liam poured us both a drink. Think they'll try again? He asked. Probably, I said. But they're not getting through this door. Outside, I heard footsteps fading into the snow. Inside, I heard laughter. And in that moment, I knew who my family really was, and who it never would be again. It's been 3 months since that night on the porch. The fake legal threat, the freezing wind, the last standoff. Since then, nothing, no voicemails, no texts, no surprise visits, no letters with half-baked invoices or court language clipped from the internet. Just silence. And for the first time in my life, I welcomed it. At first, I kept waiting for the next shoe to drop. I half expected my dad to show up at the kids' school, or for Jack to send some smug, guilt-laced message about family obligations. But the longer the quiet stretched on, the more I realized they weren't regrouping. They were just gone. And that quiet, it grew into peace. Tom turned 9 in February. He invited his entire soccer team over for a backyard party. Obstacle courses, pizza, even a homemade Nerf battle Liam set up using cardboard boxes and duct tape. Ava painted signs that said, "Go Tom," and taped them all over the fence. The kids ran around screaming, high on sugar and joy. Not once did I think about what my parents might have said about the mess, or the noise, or the fact that we were serving juice boxes instead of sparkling cider. I just sat back and watched my kids be happy, fully, freely, and unapologetically themselves. That weekend, I took Liam's hand while we sat on the porch and said, "This is what I thought family was supposed to feel like." He looked at me and smiled. That's because it is family. I've started doing things I never used to allow myself to enjoy. Sleeping in on Saturdays, leaving my phone on silent, taking the kids to the beach just because the sky was blue and we didn't have anything else to do. I didn't feel rushed or guilty or pulled in 6 directions anymore. There's still a dull ache sometimes, like an old bruise you forget about until you bump into it. Around birthdays or holidays, I'll wonder for a second if I did the right thing. If I should have tried one more time to fix something that was broken long before I had kids of my own. But every time I think about picking up the phone, I remember Thanksgiving. I remember the just adults dinner, the credit card call, the invoice, the knock on my door with that pathetic grandparents' rights threat. And I remember shutting the door, not just physically, but emotionally. That was the turning point, not just in how I handled them, but in how I saw myself. I'm not their fixer anymore. I'm not their ATM. I'm not the scapegoat they can toss blame at when they don't like how life turned out. I'm just Jeff, husband, dad, builder of Lego castles, burner of pancakes, protector of 2 amazing kids who never, not once, asked me to be perfect, just present. And that's who I am now. Present. A few nights ago, Tom asked if we were going to Grandma and Grandpa's for Easter. I said no. I told him sometimes grown-ups have to take a break from people who don't treat them kindly, even if those people are family. He blinked, thought about it, and said, "Okay, can we do an Easter egg hunt in the backyard instead?" "Absolutely," I said. Ava jumped in. "With chocolate ones?" "Only chocolate ones." They grinned and ran off to make signs, and that was that. No tears, no begging for things to go back to how they were. Because they knew somehow, even at their age, this version of our life, it was better, quieter, stronger, ours.